Management District, the chairman, Chauncey Goss. We have vice chairman Scott Wagner, Alligator Ron Bergeron, Ben Butler, Charlotte Roman, Jackie Thurlow Lipsich, and Cheryl Mead. So I want to thank you guys for what you've done. You've made a huge difference. When we made big changes with the board early in my tenure, I think it's really set a tone. Today, we're here to celebrate the removal of the nearly 6-mile-old Tamiami Trail roadbed, which has been completed 6 months ahead of schedule. The project is part of the Central Everglades Planning Project and the Comprehensive Everglades Restoration Plan. Back in March of this year, we stood right here announcing the groundbreaking for the removal of the old Tamiami Trail roadbed, which was expected to be completed by January of 2022. But as you can see behind me, where the nearly 6 miles of roadbed once stood, now clean water is moving south. The removal of the roadbed is expected to increase the flow of clean, fresh water into Northeast Shark River by more than 220 billion gallons a year. The removal of the The removal of the roadbed also reduces estuary discharges and increases flow into Everglades National Park from the water conservation areas. This project has been a partnership between the South Florida Water Management District, the Florida Department of Transportation, the Florida Department of Environmental Protection, as well as the U.S. Department of Transportation and National Park Service. Today's announcement builds on the commitments we've made since day one of my administration. We pledged significant funding for Everglades restoration projects, and we've delivered. We've actually delivered more up to this point than we had even initially forecasted, and we're proud of that. We're proud that this is now something that the legislature is fully on board with. During the last 2 years, we've made great progress on other Everglades projects, including initiating the final phase of construction of the C-43 reservoir and nearing completion of the C-44 reservoir and stormwater treatment area. We're also making great progress on construction of the EAA reservoir project, one of the most important Everglades restoration projects for reducing harmful discharges to the estuaries and sending more clean and fresh water south. The EAA reservoir project includes 2 major features: a treatment wetland that will clean water and a reservoir that will store excess water from Lake Okeechobee. At my direction, South Florida Water Management District expedited the progress on the treatment wetland component, which the state of Florida is constructing. Construction began 12 months ahead of schedule and is scheduled for completion in 2023. Earlier this year, the district approved the project partnership agreement with the U.S. Army Corps to begin construction of the 10,500-acre above-ground water storage reservoir. And just last week, Florida celebrated the completion of the Kissimmee River Restoration Project, a project more than 20 years in the making, which restores historic flows to more than 40 square miles of river floodplain in the headwaters of the Everglades. So removing barriers to move water south benefits the Everglades and restoration of its critical ecosystem, and helps to protect the St. Lucie and Caloosahatchee estuaries from harmful discharges. I'm proud of the progress we're seeing on these projects. We're going to continue to pursue them, and we're going to continue to go all the way through the finish line when we get all this stuff done. So I want to thank everyone for what they're doing. We're going to have some other folks come up. So let me invite up Alligator Ron Bergeron. And then we'll go. Do you want me to just MC? I'll just go ahead. I'll go ahead and do it. So come on, Ronnie.
Thank you, Governor. Well, howdy, everybody. I'm going to try to make this brief, but it's a mighty big subject. But, sitting here 6 months ago, looking at a road that was built over a century ago and completed in 1928. And it's hard to find anything that's older than me. But it's what a great day for the Everglades to reestablish the natural sheet flow from the northern Everglades all the way to Florida Bay. I would like to thank the governor and our legislators for their leadership in Everglades restoration. Governor, you ask us to expedite Everglades projects. I'm proud to stand here today and tell you we've delivered again. When you took office, you set out a bold vision for Everglades to reestablish the natural sheet flow and call for record funding, Everglades restoration, moving more water south and reducing harmful discharges into Caloosahatchee and to St. Lucie. We have made great progress, as the governor mentioned. We've had multiple ribbon cuttings from the Kissimmee River to the C-44 to the C-43. Under our governor's leadership, we are moving forward. I can remember the day when we took one step forward and two steps back. But under the leadership of our governor, we're taking steps forward every day to save one of the natural wonders of the whole world. I'd like to recognize all our staff at South Florida Water Management. I got to tell you, I'm a businessman that's been in business a long time, had a lot of staff around me, but you are the perfect staff. And I compliment you for your dedication to the quality of life for everyone in Florida. Moving water south is so important. That reduces the amount of water going east and west, reestablish the natural sheet flow from the northern Everglades all the way to Florida Bay. 1,500,000 acre-feet of water flowed naturally in an average rain year. And Florida Bay will benefit, and Everglades National Park and our rivers will benefit. This project affects the global Everglades. So as we go into the future and working with our governor, I can remember even prior to the election, him developing his vision for Florida, for 9 million people, our drinking water, the infrastructure to future growth and jobs, which is important as well. So I'm extremely honored to be here today. I do want to mention my commander, Rodney Beretta, sitting on the FWC Commission. This was a project that we brought to South Florida Water Management over a decade ago. And here we are today being able to celebrate this, and it's especially because of the leadership of our governor moving forward. So I want to thank everyone for being here, and I want to thank all our stakeholders. You know, your passion on the Everglades and the quality of life for future generations and our drinking water, extremely important. The journey of water is the life for South Florida. And I'm very honored, and thank you, Governor, for your appointment. It's been a great honor for me to be a part of all of this, and thank you for your leadership.
Thank you. Appreciate it. All right, Secretary Sean Hamilton.
Thank you, Governor. Today we are here to celebrate another milestone for Everglades Restoration. The Tamiami Trail projects, the EA Reservoir project, and other critical Everglades restoration projects were identified by Governor DeSantis in his Achieving More Now for Florida's Environmental Executive Order. In addition, the command was to expedite those projects and get them completed as quickly as possible. Point behind us. When he first took office, he made it clear that the environment would be one of the cornerstones of his administration. The protection of Florida's vital water resources is one of the most pressing issues facing our state. Backing up this commitment and ensuring the resources to expedite the state's efforts, he advocated for a historic investment of $2.5 billion over 4 years. With support of the legislature, Florida is now halfway there, having invested more than $1.25 billion over the past 2 years. Again, $1.25 billion in just 2 years. The water flowing unobstructed behind us shows the investment in action and once again demonstrates the governor and this state's resolve to boldly accelerate and finally deliver, as Allegheny Ron said, these critical projects, many of which were conceived and started decades ago. The removal of the old Tamiami Trail roadbed means that more water will flow south, and this part of reducing, which is a big part of reducing, not just a part, but a big part of reducing the harmful discharges from Lake Okeechobee. This is one of our many restoration initiatives, like the EA Reservoir, focused on improving water quality and restoring the hydrology and ecology of the greater Everglades ecosystem. DEP is working very closely with the South Florida Water Management District, along with other state and federal agencies, to lead these initiatives, and we are making a tremendous amount of progress under the leadership of Governor DeSantis. Our waters and wetlands are critical to the economy and our way of life in Florida. Under Governor DeSantis, the state of Florida is leading the way on environmental protection. We will continue to expedite water quality projects in South Florida and across the state for the benefit of all Floridians. Thank you for having me here today.
Rodney Barretto.
Thank you, Governor. Lieutenant Governor, it's great to see you, the hometown girl. Before we get into the remarks, I also want to recognize Ron Bergeron, who ran off and got married to his longtime friend, Ali, after 21 years.
Wow.
Snuck one in on us.
Big news.
Big news. Listen, Governor, as we said several months ago when we were standing right here, it takes leadership, and you have provided leadership from day one. It wasn't just a political statement in a campaign. You said the Everglades was your priority, and you've made it that way. You've put the money where your mouth is. You've made all the projects come to fruition. This is Everglades is going to live on forever. Thank you very much, sir.
We have Eric Eichenberg. Where's Eric?
Good morning. This is another exciting day to be together. We're getting used to these, aren't we? I want to take us back to January the 8th, 2019, just after high noon, when the governor made it very clear that we were not going to allow foot draggers to stand in our way. And under the governor's leadership and that of Chairman Goss, the South Florida Water Management District, Drew Bartlett, there's been no foot dragging. And I want to say how proud we are to be a part of this event today. For 100 years, this strip of asphalt and its successor here decapitated the flow of water south into Everglades National Park and to America's Everglades. Under this governor, he made it very clear that we need to remove the barriers, the hurdles that were in place to allow the flow of water to the south, to allow water to hit Everglades National Park and ultimately down to Florida Bay. And under this administration and this governor, to have these type of events where we're not able to just dream and wish, but to be here and to see the fruits of this labor, the fruits of leadership, the ability to say we're going to knock down the barriers, we're going to ensure that we're flowing water from Lake Okeechobee to the south. And recently the governor called for a balanced approach as it pertains to Lake Okeechobee. And as this loathsome process unfolds and heads towards the finish line, it's because of the leadership of this man that called for the removal of the Tamiami Trail original road, for the bridging of Tamiami Trail, for the flow of water south and the construction of the Everglades Reservoir, that we're seeing that. And to now have a loathsome process that's going to be balanced, equitable, and flowing the much needed water south, the removal of this road just puts a period behind the leadership that said we must send water south. Governor, thank you for all you do. Thank you for your commitment to America's Everglades and for your leadership.
Kim Taplin, Army Corps. Hey, how are you? Good to see you.
Thank you. So thank you. I'm here today on behalf of Jacksonville District's Commander Andrew Kelly, who could not be here today. And it's really good to be with you to celebrate yet another milestone in Everglades Restoration. As was mentioned just last Thursday, where we gathered around the Kissimmee River to celebrate the completion of the backfilling of that canal and restoring the Kissimmee River and its oxbows. And that, as we watched, we set the standard for large-scale ecosystem restoration that the world has been watching, and Kissimmee River is proof positive that if you build it, they will come. And so what you see behind us here, too, is another example of that, removing the barriers to flow and letting Mother Nature and water flow the way it used to in the River of Grass. Just last October, we also gathered up the road to celebrate a couple of things. The Corps' initiation of construction of what's known as the Central Everglades Planning Project South Phase. Again, removing barriers and putting in capacity to move water south. Removing the barriers to water flow and connecting the Everglades is something we've been talking about for decades. As Ron Bergeron knows, we were mentioning that before we got started here. But the thing behind us has been one of the most significant obstacles to getting water to move south and removing that old Tamiami Trail. The expedited completion of the removal of the old trail roadbed by our phenomenal partners at the South Florida Water Management District is nothing short of amazing. It's been key. Today's ceremony is proof that Everglades Restoration is described by one word these days: momentum. We are proud to partner with our federal, state, local, and tribal governments, the U.S. Congress, Florida legislature, stakeholder groups, and members of the public to continue that momentum. I'm honored to represent the Corps of Engineers and celebrate with you longtime friends and colleagues who have worked so hard for so many years to bring us to this moment. Thank you for inviting me. I'm honored to be here. Thank you, sir.
Great. Well, thanks, everyone. We really appreciate that. I'm going to make a few other comments about a different subject and then take a couple questions. There's been a lot of talk with respect to the COVID positive test and things like that. And I think it's important to point out, since we did our Seniors First vaccination effort at the end of last year, beginning of this year, we've seen between a 70 and 75% reduction in mortality year over year compared to last summer's wave, as well as in the January peak. We've also seen almost 25,000 fully vaccinated people test positive. I think we had assumed that it would provide more sterilizing immunity, and so the positive tests, and people are like, well, why is this happening? I was vaccinated, it shouldn't happen. And all I can tell you is what the data we see and the hospitals we talk to all point that this is helping reduce dramatically mortality, particularly among our most vulnerable residents. You can still test positive. I think we're seeing that. But at the end of the day, really turning this in from something that was much more threatening to, say, a senior citizen to something that is more manageable. I mean, that's a huge, huge thing. I mean, we have a 90% reduction plus in mortality in long-term care facilities since we went into those at the end of last year, beginning of this year. So yes, there are positive tests among vaccinated. At the same time, the mortality and all the data is very, very clear. And so we think doing the Seniors First was the right thing to do. And we think the fact that even amidst a lot of positive tests, you still see much less mortality than we did year over year. That's important. So it may not mean you'll ever test positive, but I do think the severity has been lessened, and I think these hospitals would all say the same thing in terms of what they're seeing. In fact, they're seeing a much lower median age, and I think it's because so many of the elderly, we basically protected the vulnerable very quickly. 91% of seniors, according to CDC in Florida, have gotten at least one shot. If you look 50 and up, over 75% vaccinated, and then many have recovered from COVID. So you're looking at well over 80+% that have some form of protection. Also worth pointing out, a place like Miami-Dade, Jackson Hospital System, one of the largest in the country, their COVID positive patients are about half of what they were during last summer's wave right now, the census. Now we have other parts of Florida where it's exceeding what they had last summer, but I do think the fact that Miami went through a wave, I think you have a lot of population immunity. I do think you have good vaccination. That is just the reality that we're seeing here, and so I think that's a positive sign. So going forward, we're really looking at to me, the best indicator, I know the media fixates on cases, but the best indicator is the emergency room visits for COVID-like illness. And when you see that go up, you're going to see increase in prevalence and an increase in hospital admissions. When that levels off or goes down, all the other indicators follow that. And so we follow that very closely. It went up very sharply throughout most of July. Towards the end of last month, it started to stabilize. We've basically been plateau. So we're looking to see that roll over. And when that rolls over, I think you're going to see some of the other indicators roll over as well. But at the end of the day, having protected the vulnerable, having protected seniors, we do have the data that's saying this is reducing the potential severity of that. And so these things come. We have summer season for whatever reason in the Sun Belt and particularly Florida. We'll nose over and go. It will probably come back in the winter just like last year, not as much as the Northeast, but we'll see. But at the end of the day, I think ultimately the numbers speak for themselves in terms of the severity and the fact that we're down so much both in nursing home and in the broader senior population. And so that's a really, really good thing. Happy to take a few questions.
Governor, Florida is being considered the epicenter of the pandemic because not just the number of cases, but also the number of hospitalizations, with Florida making up about, with 50,000 hospitalizations in the country and more than 10,000
Such as?
Or what are you hoping to do in regards to the increase in hospitalizations here in the state?
Well, like I mentioned, we are watching the CLI. That is plateauing. The hospital admissions have slowed. I don't think we've reached the peak yet, but I think we're going to settle in hopefully this week or next week. But in terms of shutting down, we're not shutting down. We're going to have schools open. We're protecting every Floridian's job in this state. We're protecting people's small businesses. These interventions have failed time and time again throughout this pandemic, not just in the United States, but abroad. They have not stopped the spread, and particularly with Delta, which is even more transmissible. If it didn't stop it before, it definitely ain't going to stop it now. And so I think it's very important that we understand that. The best defenses we have are the combination of the natural immunity that's been built up and our seniors first vaccination efforts. I think that's why you have such a steep decline in mortality year over year. And look, at the end of the day, would I rather have 5,000 cases amongst 20-year-olds or 500 cases amongst seniors? I would rather have the younger because of the effect that it has. And so I think protecting the vulnerable has been the right way to go. And, I do anticipate us monitoring those indicators. But I think it's important to point out because, obviously media does hysteria. You try to fearmonger. You try to do this stuff. And when they'll talk about hospitalizations, our hospitals are open for business. Like I said, Jackson, the COVID patients are half of what they were last year. Even in places that have more, COVID patients represent a fraction of the overall hospital beds. And so I don't want to see a repeat because of some of the media hysteria where people who have heart problems or stroke are not going in to get care. That happened in March of 2020 and in April. There was a huge decline in people who would show up to the ED. Literally, people are having heart attacks at home because they thought that there weren't either not enough room in the hospital or they thought that they would get COVID and die as a result of that. So we don't want to follow that. People should be good. You should go. And then I would say just the broader public, particularly our seniors who've been vaccinated, I think the data's clear. You may test positive. We hope that wouldn't happen, but the mortality and all that is dramatically reduced, and so you do have protection. So the evictions moratorium was not something that the state, it was imposed by the CDC. And I don't think that they had authority to do that. The U.S. Supreme Court indicated as much. They didn't terminate it. They said if it goes out, then that's fine. But at the end of the day, it's a similar issue to the cruise ships. The CDC shut down our cruise industry for over a year, and with no end in sight, and they had no real plausible way to go. So we sued CDC for the cruise. And when we filed the suit, people said, "Oh, it's a stunt. It'll never work." We won in the district court. A tremendous opinion by a great federal judge. They then appealed CDC to the 11th Circuit. 11th Circuit put a stay on that decision. So that would have basically reimposed the CDC rules pending appeal. We appealed to the U.S. Supreme Court, and incredibly, the 11th Circuit reversed itself. And so we've won that case. I know it's on appeal, but I think it's going to be moot by the time it gets there. So it's a question of, do these unelected agencies have the ability to do this without any legislative authorization? And I think in a constitutional system, the answer has got to be no. And I think that they overstepped their bounds on that, and I do think they overstepped their bounds, of course, with the cruise ships.
7 kids are in the Joe DiMaggio Hospital. 2 of them are in ICU. Don't you think the mask would help those poor children?
Do you have any data to suggest that? Do you know if they were wearing masks? Well, they're not right. They're not eligible for the vaccination. I mean, that's not. I mean, well, so you're blaming the kids, saying they weren't wearing masks and so they're in the ICU. With all due respect, I find that deplorable. To blame a victim who ends up being hospitalized. You don't know their story. You don't know what happened with that. And this has been a really negative thing throughout this whole thing with some of these quote experts, some of the media. Somebody contracts a highly transmissible airborne virus, and they're viewed as having done something wrong. And that's just not the way you do it. When people come in, you treat them. We obviously have some people that are not vaccinated that have been admitted to hospitals. Are you going to sit there and criticize, or are we going to try to treat and try to help the folks? You know, I'm just sick of this judge. I'm sick of the judgmental stuff on some of this stuff. Nobody's trying to get ill here, okay? It's a very, there's people that were hermits for a year and a half that wore 6 masks and did that and still contracted it, okay? So let's just be real here, and let's not indulge these things that somehow it's their fault for not doing it. So, okay, we'll see you guys later. Thank you.
To repair any damage. I always like to remind people that everything developed for the International Space Station and in use